Hi everybody, it's Tammy, and okay, so today we have another little project that I've been working on. I've been putting this junk journal together, and I recently was asked by one of my lovely subscribers if I could walk through my process for adding signatures to a book using a repurposed book. So I went ahead and started this project, and we are at the point of being ready to add signatures to the book. So first of all, I'm going, so these are all my signatures. I just keep them in there until I'm ready to sew them in. I'm not going to sew all of them in on camera, but I'll walk you through the first several, maybe the first one or two. But I think more importantly, I'll walk you through the process of preparing the book to accept the signatures. So as you can see, this is a Reader's Digest book, and actually the quality, it's still in pretty decent shape. Usually Reader's Digest books are a little bit more, what's the right word? They're usually a little bit more, they kind of fall apart a little bit. This one I think is a little bit newer. It's not quite as old as some that I've had. I'm going to get rid of this extra little bit of paper here along the inside of the spine, just because I didn't want it to be causing any problems for us. So, okay, so basically what I'm going to walk through is preparing the spine, and then my template process for sewing in the signatures and marking the holes, and then I'll, if we have time, I will sew in a signature or two. But I just recently did a video where I showed that process, so if we get too far into it, I may go ahead and keep that for another time or another video. Okay, so here I have just an extra piece of, it's a file folder. It's kind of thick, but it's not super thick like a really thick file folder. What I'm going to do with this is I just want to add a little bit more sturdiness to the middle of this section here. So I'm going to measure about 1/8 of an inch from each side, from the top and bottom, sorry. So I'm actually, I'll just measure for the entire dimension. Okay, so it looks like about 7.5 inches high is what I want by, let's see, I want it to fit in between these two spots, so between there and there. So I'm just kind of looking to see what that is, and it is 1 4/8. That's not right. That's not correct math. Math is hard, guys. Okay, so it's just shy of 1.5. So I'm gonna, okay, so I said 7, what did I say? 7.5? 7.25? Let's do that again. 7.5 by just shy of 1.5. So I'm going to take my trimmer here, and we will find 7.5. How's everybody doing today? I know I'm having a good weekend, kind of a quiet weekend, which is always nice. Just kind of refresh and get back to set back to 0 again, ready for the week ahead. Okay, so I said just shy of 1.5, so I'm gonna go there. And let's go ahead and, if I didn't measure right, it's probably not the end of the world because I have a lot of scraps of that paper. But the goal is for this to fit inside here, which it does, and actually there's a little bit extra room, but that's okay. It won't matter too much. So, alright, now we're going to glue that down, and I like to use Fabri-Tac, but whatever glue that you like to use the best, use that. Kind of a rainy day here today, so kind of wanted to get outside, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. I'd like to go for a walk or something, but it sure feels a lot like spring. Spring has never left. All right, so we're just going to put that in. Oh, and of course I've got extra glue. Always. Okay. Just gonna let that sit for just a minute and let it dry. It doesn't matter that the glue kind of shows a little bit at the top because I'll be covering all this up anyway. I just wanted to add that to just kind of create a little bit more sturdiness here. Okay, so next thing that I want to do is I have a couple pieces of fabric here that I'd like to also use for reinforcing the spine. And then this here is just for a little bit of decoration, kind of out of the top and the bottom. So I think I'll add that first. And let's see how tall this is. Oh, perfect. Okay, so I don't need tons of it. So I'm going to measure this to be about the same width of what we just cut. Let me get my better scissors for this. And I'm just gonna eyeball this. And actually, I don't need to use the entire length of this, but I've got so much of it, I don't think I'm ever going to run out of it. So I don't mind using a little bit extra for the process here. So I'm going to cut that off because I think that's folded there at the top or the bottom. And then just go ahead and glue that down too. So I'll add a little bit more glue on top of where we just glued our reinforcement. Okay, that should hold it. And I'll just place that in there. This is totally an unnecessary step. So if you don't have any of this, then don't feel like you need to add it. I just like to add it to some of my journals just because I think it makes it a little bit older looking and more vintagey. So, all right. So now we've kind of reinforced our spine a little bit with a little bit of extra paper and added this for a little bit of extra decoration. Next, I had bought these muslin bags, and I can't even tell you where. Probably Tuesday morning because that's where I seem to buy everything. I don't love I'm not going to use them for bags, and the fabric quality isn't the best, so I've been using them as part of my construction in making journals sometimes. And then like I'll use the strings. Actually, let me pull the string out. I'll use this for adding to tags and whatnot. So now let me just need to cut that so I can rip it, because I always like to have a little bit of a frayed edge. And let's see, I don't want to rip the bottom, so let me go back over here and I'll rip this side. And we can, there we go. Because if I had ripped the bottom, if I needed a longer piece, then I wouldn't have had that anymore. So I'm gonna come up here and rip this. Okay. Now, I could save this, and actually I probably will throw this in with the rest of my fabric scraps, and we could use these to make tags with. So, okay, so I don't actually need the entire piece, the entire length. Basically what I'm using this for is to add stability and strength across the spine of the book, so that pulling it this way, it'll have more strength. So I don't need to measure to the very top and bottom, just enough to make sure it's not going anywhere. And if you don't work with fabric all that often, the little snip and then rip trick is kind of awesome. It's pretty much all fabric will behave this way, unless it's like maybe a special kind of an impulsive fabric or something. But it's really a great way to manipulate your fabric, and it will always rip in a straight line, so you never have to worry about that, which is awesome. Okay, so at this point I'm pretty much ready to glue this in next. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to grab my pencil, and you don't have to do this. This is just kind of a way that I like to do it, but I'm just going to add some guiding lines for myself to know kind of where it starts and stops, so I don't get glue beyond that point. And I'm going to start on this side, staying within those lines, or as close to it as possible, and then just add some glue. And because this is Fabri-Tac and we're dealing with fabric, it will bleed through to the fabric. I don't know if you can see here. So I always like to smooth it with my finger a little bit, just to make sure it won't do that too terribly. And then I'm going to line this up and secure that down. Alright, so now obviously we haven't actually done anything to secure our spine, but I'm actually going to turn it this way because I like to work from left to right. But now I'm going to go ahead and add some glue in the middle. I don't have to mark any points where my fabric is going to be done, because I've already got my fabric. So I'm going to add a good amount here in the middle along the sides. So we want to make sure that's nice and secure. And then just a little bit in the middle here. And a little bit beyond. Okay, and again, I'm going to go ahead and smooth that down with my finger. Again, I'm not too worried at this point about the glue coming through the fabric. I just don't want to have a gloppy mess when I add the decorative fabric on top, because then it will show through. So I'm just trying to keep it as neat and clean as I can. Alright, so we're basically done gluing that down. I think I'm going to have to glue this down here a little bit. And this fabric, you can tell it's just not a very high quality fabric. There's an awful lot of fraying going on, so I probably will go ahead and cut this with my actual scissors here, because we got a lot of extra going on that we don't really need. It's not very helpful for us here, so we'll get rid of that. And plus it just makes things a little more difficult to work with. I'll get rid of this. Again, this is going to be covered up with our end pages anyway, so this being super neat and clean is not the end. Doesn't have to. Don't worry too much about it. Is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so get that out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and actually, I'm going to use a little bit of glue stick because that'll work just fine. I just need to tack it down so it doesn't keep getting... I just want it to be nice and smooth here on the edge. I wouldn't usually use Yoo-Hoo for gluing fabric down, but because we're going to be putting the end papers on over this anyway, it'll work for right now. So, okay, so let me go ahead and just add a line so I can see where I'm gluing to. And I'll fill that in. And once again, I will smooth that down with my finger. Great. So I wasn't as clean as I could have been here, but that's okay. Just rub that away and it'll be fine. All right, so here's a fun little trick that I've just recently learned. If you put a little bit of glue on your finger instead of the spot and then rub that onto a corner like this, it works a whole lot better sometimes and it doesn't get glue everywhere. So there's a little pro tip for you. All right, so let's find, okay, so this is our top again. And now we're at the point where we're ready to put our decorative fabric on top. So this is the fabric that I chose, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time being a little bit more careful lining this up with the existing end papers, and actually I'll probably go a little bit further below it. I don't mind that the bottom is fraying just a little bit. Actually, I kind of like it that it's doing that. So I'm trying to match it both vertically and horizontally. I want it to stay even. And then smoothing this out. We got some wrinkles in the fabric, but don't worry about those. Those will, when you glue it down, those will go away. So, okay, snip a little bit there and go ahead and rip that, and we've got ourselves a straight line at the top. Okay, so this is going to be visible from the inside of the book, which is why I don't want to, I want to keep it looking nice. Okay. All right. So now at this point, I think what I will do is I'm going to hold on to this and keep it secure. I'm going to grab a bulldog clip or two actually and just clip that down so it doesn't move. And then I'll do the same as what I did before and start gluing from that side. Okay, I can flip this over and I'll just start gluing from here and work our way out. Okay, so kind of being a little bit sparing with the glue. I don't want tons and tons because, like I said, it will come and show through your fabric if you're not careful. So, and I'm trying to work a little bit quickly because this glue is getting ready to be thrown out. So it's kind of thick and gloppy at the moment. So it's gonna dry a little faster than a new bottle would. So, which is actually kind of helpful sometimes in a way, but also not helpful in other ways. And unless you use Fabri-Tac, you don't really understand what I mean by that. But if you do use Fabri-Tac, you do. You know what I'm saying. Okay, I'm gonna secure that down. And let me, whoops, got glue all over the place there. I'm gonna smooth this down with my finger a little bit. All right, I'm just gonna work that down with my fingers. I may have to come back and add a little bit more glue after I get the other side secure, which is fine. I think it was kind of starting to dry over here on this side, but as you can see, I was successful in not having a big old glue spot coming through the fabric, which was my goal. Alright, so those are just little fuzzies. I'll get those later before I, it's just from the other fabrics it was sitting next to. Okay. Now, I'll go ahead and take these off. And I'll save those for later. I might need them for sewing in the signatures. Before that, I'm going to get rid of that glue from my work surface. Okay. Flip this around and we'll do the same thing on this side. I'm going to try and get it down into that crease and all the way to the end so that it doesn't start to peel, is the goal. And actually I'll kind of help this other piece stick down a little bit better than I had originally done with this next layer. Okay, let's smooth this out. And work this with my finger to smooth it down. And there we go. Perfect. Okay, so I see I need to add a little bit more glue. I'm going to pull this out just a little bit. Get rid of the glue from my finger. How well can you see? I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. There we go. Is that better? Can you see better now? Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. Still trying to get used to this new tripod. Actually, it's not really a tripod. This new swing arm setup with that I've been using for my camera, which I absolutely love. Okay. So, once again, just gonna smooth that out. Here we don't need to be quite as careful in the middle for the glue to show through because we'll be placing our end papers probably about there. So I just want to make sure, like we did with this bottom piece, that it's not gonna come up on us. Alrighty, so let me get rid of all the fuzz balls from the middle. I'm just gonna make sure and run my finger through there and make sure it's secure. I don't really want a bunch of buckling, but that will happen. It's not the end of the world if it does. Okay, so like I said, we're gonna be putting our holes directly through the spine on this one. We're going to be sewing our signatures directly into the spine. And for these signatures, I actually made them a little bit smaller in number of pages so that I would have more signatures than I usually do. Excuse me, my goodness. I got the hiccups. And I was hoping that by doing that, sewing them directly into the spine will sometimes not let the signatures lay completely flat. So I thought by adding more signatures, we would maybe alleviate that problem. So usually, this is the first time I've actually ever had this many signatures, but the main, the actual process is the same as anything I've ever done before. So I guess don't worry about that, I guess. Okay, so again, I need to measure, I want to measure from the top and bottom. This is going to be my template, and this is not, this is just slightly, this is not super thick cardstock, but it's also not copy weight paper either, so it's kind of in between, which is kind of perfect. It's kind of what I look for, but any kind of paper, like I have a bunch of templates that I hold on to, because why would you recreate the wheel when you don't need to? But as you can see, like this is pretty thin right here. This paper is pretty thin, and then this is like heavier cardstock. So it all works. It just having a little bit thicker card when you're first starting will kind of help you out a little bit. Okay, I'm using the grid on my mat below to kind of help me line up the side here. Pretty much the goal is I want to get this in between the two, I want it to sit in the spine. Okay, so there we go. That's what I needed. So I'm going to make my mark kind of right there, and we will cut that. And then on the top, I need to take off, about that much. So we're going to the very top of the book. Right, so now let me get this out. Whoops, that's not right. So let's cut the top and the side where I marked them. And like I said, I think my Fiskars cutter is on its last legs, so I always have to start from the top and go down. Otherwise it'll not do a very good job of cutting. And it doesn't matter what blade I use because every blade does the same thing, which is awesome. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to write top at the top because that's kind of important. It's easy to, when you're sewing your signatures in, it's easy to forget which way is which way is up, on your signatures especially too. So I always make sure and do that. Okay, so I'm kind of just looking here to see what kind of measurement I've got. So we've got 1 3/4 for a width that we're working with. And let me count the number of signatures I have. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so we got to get 9 signatures to fit evenly within 1 3/4. Typically, I would say if you can have 1/8 of an or 1/4 of an inch in between each signature, that is best. That's what I typically try to do. But I know already I'm not going to be able to do that for this book because we've got more signatures and not that much amount of space. If you don't already have one of these, this is a Tim Holtz ruler. As you can see here, we've got a center point mark, and then it goes out from there on either side, and then it's just a regular ruler on this side, and there is a metal edge on this side. So you can, this ruler, and then this edge is tapered down. So if you don't have one of these, I highly suggest getting yourself one. Trust me, it's worth the price. This thing has saved me so many headaches. I can't even tell you. It's just awesome. So let's pretend you don't have one of these, and we'll do this, I guess, the hard way. So please bear with me, because we've already seen that my math is not great. So I'm going to assume that you all have some kind of grid surface. So first thing I'm going to do is count how many quarters of an inch are in between the width of my spine here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So normally I would love it if I could have an equal amount of space on both sides and then fit my signatures in between those spaces. Sadly, we can't do that this time. So at this point, we kind of need to look at what's our next alternative. I'm going to go ahead and use this ruler. So I've got my center line marked here. If you don't have this ruler, you could very easily just fold this piece of paper in half this way, vertically, and that would find your center line, and then fold it, if I can pick it up, and then fold it this way to find the very center middle, which I will fold it that way to find the middle part, but let me get this evened up here. Okay, so here's my center line. So let's pretend like we folded it in half and I didn't just use the ruler to cheat. Okay, so we've got 9 signatures. Now I'm going to count 1/8 of an inch, and any ruler will have that. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14 all the way across. So if we take that and put 9 of them, you know, this is going to be, this is a lot. This is one of my least favorite parts of making journals. I'm being pretty precise because I know that by being precise at this point will keep my signatures from being wonky or uneven or, you know, all that other stuff. So I'm going to count from the middle. Let's see. So if we've got 9 signatures, that means we've got 4. We'll have 1 in the very middle and then 4 on either side, right? So what we'd like to do is have a little bit of space on both sides, and actually this is working out perfectly. So we'll have 1 there, 1, 2, nope, that's not perfect. Okay, that's not right. Can't do that. Let me erase those here. Okay, you guys see what I'm saying though? So breaking it down, making the 2 halves, breaking it down is going to help us out. So let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not going to work either. So basically I need to be in the middle of these tick marks, or let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I went the middle there, the middle of those, and then there. This isn't completely even, but it's gonna be okay in the long run. It'll be all right. We'll just go with this. Okay, so the middle of that, 3 and 4. All right, now I'm going to do the same on the bottom. There, 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 and there. So these are going to be a little close together, but it'll be okay. If I could make another suggestion, it would be don't have an odd number of signatures. It'll just make your life so much better. So much easier if you don't have that. Okay, so I've got 2 points. Now I just need to draw a straight line in between them, all the way from the top to the bottom, as straight as I can. And I don't know if you can see, but my paper is kind of curved a little bit there, so I'm a little bit of a disadvantage at this point. But I'll work through that. That'll be okay. I might be cursing by the end of this project. We'll see. Sewing in signatures is not my favorite thing to do, and now I've given myself that many more to do, which is awesome. Okay. Trying to do this as quickly as I can, but still trying to keep it correct. My lines are not completely straight, but that's all right. It'll still work out. Okay, so we've got our vertical lines. Now we need to figure out our center lines. So at this point, I would say the fastest way would be fold this in half from the top to the bottom to find our middle point, which we have here. I'm going to match that up with one of the big lines in my grid here on my board, and I'm going to draw a line. And that'll be our starting point. Let's make sure this one's more straight. Okay. All right, so there's our center. From there, I like to, and again, here I'm using the center point. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have a center ruler for this portion. Let me zoom you in a little bit closer. Okay, so you see all the vertical lines that I made, and then I made the middle line here. I'm going to line my ruler up, and actually I kind of like to put it in the very middle so that I can do both the top and bottom tick marks at the same time. So from the middle line, I like to go 1.5 inches out, so we're gonna go right here and right there. And then one more, let's see, let's do 1 inch from there. So we went 1.5 inches and then 1 more inch. And then from the middle, we'll go 1.5 inches, which will be 7.5. And then from that point, another inch, which would be 8.5. You could do another 1.5 inches. Sometimes I just change it. Sometimes I like to do two lines of 1.5 inches. I think it just makes it more interesting sometimes if you change it up a little bit. And then all we have to do at this point is connect the dots again. And fortunately, I have grid lines to help me on my cutting board. So I'm using those to help me line up too. And then okay, last line, done with our ruler. Now all we have to do is every time a horizontal line and a vertical line meet, that's where one of our holes is going to be made. So I tend to like to go through and do this for each one. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. I find that when I'm sewing the signatures in, it makes it just a little bit easier to locate the hole visually. So I do spend the time to do this. And like you can see here, the middle signatures are going to be a little bit tighter, but that's okay. It'll work out. I do like to have more space in between than this, but we'll see how it turns out. If I have to keep this journal for myself, oh well. I wouldn't mind that either, because I kind of like it. It's a fun one. Okay, so just about done with that. Alright, I don't know how much of that you saw. Sorry about that. Now, I need to find my pokey tool, which is this. And I said this in the past video. I wish I could tell you where I found that from, where I got it from. I have no idea. I don't remember where I got it. Okay, so I like to pre-poke all of these, so I will do that now. And I'm trying to be as even as I can and get it in that very center spot. Okay, so once I've gone through and done all those, then I'll come back, and I like to just pick it up and I just poke my tool right through it. I support it on the back side with my index finger, and by pre-poking the hole, I was able to kind of give myself an easier place to start, and it's more exact in the middle than if I just try to do this without pre-poking. Trust me, it's just faster. So spend the extra minute or so to do that. Okay, let me pause and I'll be back after I'm done with all that. So I've gone ahead and poked through all of the holes. I don't know if you can even see through them or not, but just trust me that they've been poked through. Now I have got my book back, and I'm at the point where I'm ready to poke my holes through the spine of the book. So what I want to do is line up my template directly in the middle of the book, and I actually like to flip it this direction. I don't know, it just kind of helps me line it up a little bit better. So it needs to sit inside the spine, so when you lift up the front and the back, and I've got just a little smidge of extra paper, but it'll be okay. But you want it to sit inside there like this, and then also you want it to be matched up both widthwise and vertically. So I need to pull it down just a little bit, and it is kind of hard to see where the top of the book is, but I feel pretty good about this. So at this point, a lot of people use like a telephone book to poke through. I don't use that. What I tend to do is I just hold on to this real tight. I don't let it move, and this just kind of comes from having done it for as long as I've been making journals. But I like to just hold it and support the back with my index finger, being careful not to poke myself and I just go right through the book. So pretty simple. Yeah, I'm totally, I need to, okay, let me get some washi tape, get some help here. This is a lot more holes than I'm used to poking, so here's another little thing you could try. Oh, this washi tape is going to be fun. Okay, there we go. All right, it's not going to hold super well, but it'll be good enough to keep it from moving too much. And I'll add some on the other side too. Sorry for my fingers, you guys. My fingers are so dry right now. Okay. There we go. Now it shouldn't move around on us. I don't know if you can see the holes there, but we got some holes going on. Okay, so let me go back to what I was doing. So I'm basically just going back through each of the holes and poking right through. Pretty simple. Doing my best to go straight down. I don't want to go off to the side or diagonal or anything. Okay. The most important thing is not to forget one of the holes, which is easy to do, especially when you have this many. Don't start with this many when you're first starting. Trust me, it's easier if you don't have this many. Okay, and you can see I'm just a little bit off on that one, but it'll be okay. It'll work out. All right, so got that done. Now I can take my template off. We've got our holes. Poke through, and most importantly, I can very easily see them both from this side and from this side. As you're working on your journal, it will be helpful to have that. I've put in the past, I've used a darker fabric or a fabric that it's hard to see the holes through, and it just makes things so much more difficult. So I'm kind of looking for some holes maybe that could be closing up, so I'm just gonna re-poke some of these. I might do this as I'm going through, and if you have to kind of rotate your pokey tool a little bit, sometimes that helps too. So okay, I'll probably have to do this as I'm working, as I'm sewing signatures in. I don't want to spend tons of time. Okay, so make sure this is top up. And now, if you had folded your template in half, linked vertically at the beginning, good job. Sometimes I use one template for poking the holes in the spine, and then I use a different template for actually poking the holes in the signatures, because I know that they're the same width this direction, but since I want to show you this using the same template, I needed to fold this in half. So I'm looking for the center point, and actually, since these holes are so close together, I'm going to grab a pen and just kind of draw a bigger circle around the center hole just to help me find it a little easier as I'm working. Okay. Now, whoops, we have our center template, and I'm going to start poking the holes in my first signature. So one thing that I did when I first started making journals was I would obviously open my signature to the center point, and then use a bulldog clip on one side and then on the other side. And depending on how thick your signatures are, this is definitely more or less helpful. Remember when I wrote down top on the top of my template? This is why, because that helps me remember. Okay, so I try to keep my signature, I don't want it to be completely flat when I poke the holes. I want to keep it kind of folded and in a way that it's more natural. Otherwise your holes won't be quite in the right spot. So obviously I want to sit my template and everything in the middle as far down as I can. I don't want papers kind of here, there, and everywhere. And then this is another one where a lot of people will use a phone book below and set it directly into the phone book spine to help them get everything seated down. I think that's a great way to do it. I've actually never done it that way. I guess I've been able to figure out my own method, which is as I'm holding this, if you can see how my fingers are, I'm supporting the back side and especially this very middle with my middle finger, and I know where that's going to be coming out. I don't want to get my finger too far, but by holding it this way, I'm able just to hold on to it and poke right through. So same here. Now I've moved my fingers on either side and poked through the middle, and same here, just poking right through. Now, I like to, after I've done the top one, go back through the middle hole so that everything kind of stays in place, and turn everything around, and now poke these two holes. And once again, just got one finger on each side, kind of supporting and making sure everything stays centered in the middle of the signature. Alright, so now we're done with our signature, or our template, and we have our signature. We've got some holes poked. I forgot to get my thread out. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think I'm going to use the dark brown, not the black on this one. Okay. This is one of the threads that, or this is one of the, I guess it's thread. This is one of the threads that I like to use to bind my signatures in, especially if they're not super thick. This isn't the sturdiest. If I could get wax linen thread, that would be my preference. I just don't have any. And this works good. So, alright, so I've cut myself a length of thread. I'd say it's about 2 lengths taller. I'd say double up your signature, and well, I guess 2.5 of your signature's lengths. I'm not, if I have to throw some away, it's okay. I don't want to stress myself out about that. So this is the needle I use, and this, again, I showed this in one of my previous videos. I'm using specialty hand needles for upholstery, and I'm just using this one right here. It's from Dritz. I want to say I got it from Hobby Lobby or Joanne Fabrics. I can't tell you which one. And I just, I don't like pulling it out of there every time, so I just had this other little needle holder from another project, so I just poked just another hole in there. So that's my needle. So let's go ahead and thread our needles. You guys, I've got glue all over my fingers. So before you do this, it's helpful to get rid of that or you're just gonna be fighting it. Okay, so thread our needle and we're ready to go. So, all right, so I know that this is the top. This is the top, and I'm gonna double check my spine to make sure that this is the top. So what I'm gonna do is, I know that I need to start at the very outside line of holes, and I'm going to go from the center of my signature down into the center hole in the first row through. Okay? And I'm going to pull that. Make sure and keep a tail because you're going to need that to tie it later. And I'm going to come back up through the next hole up. Right? So you see my needle here? Now I'm going to find my hole in my signature and go back through there. Just like that. Don't worry about being super tight at this point. We can go back and fix that later before we tie it off. So now I'm going to go back, see again where I said to not have it be straight flat. It's helpful if it's just a little bit closed. Going back through the top hole, I'm going to go and find the top hole on my spine and go through there. Don't stick yourself with the needle. Okay. Make sure I don't lose my tail. And if you want to, you could tuck that under your bulldog clip, but to be honest with you, that just wastes time. Once you get the hang of this, it's not so bad. You'll get used to, and actually I'm going to get rid of this because it's kind of in my way now. You'll get used to it. Okay, so now I've gone in from the inside, back up through the outside, and then back through the inside. Now I need to find this hole. I don't want to catch the other string as I'm going back through, but going back through the hole that we just came from, and then back up through the signature, just like that. If you do catch your thread, check now, because if you did, you can unthread your string, pull it out from here, and keep going. Okay? And if I do that on any of these, I'll show you what I mean. So, alright, so now I'm going to go back through the center hole, kind of pulling the other thread a little bit taut so that I don't catch it, and finding the hole in my spine and coming back out. Oops. Okay, so we've got the top half done. Now let's do the bottom. I'm pulling everything out. Okay, so now I'm going to go in through this hole here. Okay, and find my center again. Okay, that's just extra. I'll put that back in later. Okay, find my center again, and I'm kind of propping it up with my fingers. And like I said, don't worry. Don't stick yourself. Don't worry about your signature being super tight at this point. Like I said, we can go back and fix that later. Okay, so come back through. Now we're going to go to the outside, and I know I do this differently than some people do. I don't do it the right way. So at this point, maybe don't listen to me or just do it the way I do it. So coming back through the bottom hole, and then I'm going to come back through the hole that I just came out of. Okay, so going back up and find my center again. And there we go. So came back up through there. Now at this point, I know that my, whoops, I just dropped my needle right down my shirt. Don't do that. Okay, at this point, I know that the string is a little bit loose, right? So we don't want to keep it that way we don't want to tie it in a knot and have it be loose like that. So I like to tighten things here. And I'm going to check both sides before I'm completely done. You don't want to tighten it so tight that it's to the point of maybe almost breaking, but we want to make sure it's secure. We don't want it going anywhere. Okay, so that'll tighten when I tie the knot. Okay, so then at this point, I'm going to tie my knot in the middle. And this is how I do it, sort of. So I want to get my knot down into the middle, and then I'm securing that with my middle finger now, and tying the second overhand knot. There we go, and it's secure. And I'm going to do one more, just make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Okay. Now at this point, you can leave these long if you'd like. I think for right now, I will go ahead and do that, and I may add a charm or two at the bottom, or if you want to decorate these or tie them in a bow, you can do all those things. So there we go. So at this point, oops, this is the top. There we go. Let's fall down to the bottom. So at this point, we've got our first signature sewn in. And I would just continue that process that we just did and do that with the rest of the 8 signatures. So I'll go ahead and do that, and I will meet back up with you in a little bit. Okay, so I'm back again. I've got all the signatures sewn in. As you can see, it looks pretty awesome on the spine. And then I'll just quickly kind of just show you how it looks. So we've got a little bit of room on the front and the back, and then in between the signatures there's just a little bit of room. I would ideally like to have a little bit more than that, but that's okay. This is gonna work well. So at this point, all you need to do is, oh, and I decided to go ahead and leave these long for right now. I'm thinking about doing something with this, but we'll see what I end up with at the end. Here is my template. I can keep this for another one. Actually, I probably will keep this for another one because I like that it's the height of a Reader's Digest journal, and I've got lots of Reader's Digest books that I can use, so I'll keep this for future use. And so yeah, at this point, all you need to do is measure for your front and back end papers. And I'm not going to spill the beans completely on what I plan to do, but I'm going to use this as part of my end paper. So I'll go ahead and I guess kind of show you the basics of what I do. If you have a book, or if your book spine is a little bit more deteriorated than this one, and you don't really have a good guide for where the existing, like, okay, so basically I've had books in the past where I've had to pretty much rip all of this off, or it's come off without my help. But so pretty much all you got to do at this point is measure, and I kind of like to have a little bit of the spine fabric showing. It's just kind of nice. So you're going to measure to about 1/8 of an inch on the top and bottom, and then obviously you would want yours to go all the way to the end of the cover. So since I'm going to be doing something a little bit different with this one, I won't show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave that for the final flip through of this book. But yeah, you can use a double-sided tape is what I would recommend around the outer edges, just so that you know that you have a crisp and clean, oh, it's raining. So you know the paper won't come up on the edges. And then what I like to do is take my fabric tack in between and put that in the middle to secure it down. You do want to add glue in kind of throughout all the paper that you do use to put down, because it will make sure that there's no buckling or anything. If you want to decorate your end pages, like say with some sewing, or if you want to add a pocket and sew that down or something, I would do that before you glue it down, because then at that point you're obviously not going to be able to put that through the sewing machine, all that good stuff. So kind of think through that before you fasten your end papers down. So there we go. I hope you had a good time following along with me as I worked on this little project, and I guess I'll probably stay here and finish this journal up, and soon you'll probably be seeing this journal available in my Etsy shop, and a flip through of that to go along with it, obviously, because that's what I like to do with all my journals. After this, I don't know, have a couple of ideas for upcoming journals. I have an old cigar box that I thought I'd try and turn into a journal with some Tim Holtz paper, kind of do the grungy, vintagey thing. Or I might do, I've been thinking about doing a mixed media type of journal too. So we'll see what I do next. But anyway, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you to all of my new subscribers, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Bye!